I think it's worth to pay attention to native rollups. I think it's worth to believe strongly that this is very important path. It's worth to also be cautious and understand that even in that world, all the other L2 structures remain extremely important.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy podcast, where we ask your favorite builders the questions you wish you could ask yourself. This is a production of neonewstoday.com, and I'm your host, Dylan Grabowski. In this episode, we're joined by Tomasz Stańczak, the co-executive director at the Ethereum Foundation, an entity that supports the development, research, and growth of the Ethereum blockchain ecosystem by providing funding, technical resources, and community building. In this conversation, we discussed the Ethereum Foundation's new outlook on empowering teams and builders, the surprising amount of pros to the co-leadership model, how Tomasz empowered teams within the EF to take control over their swim lanes, the balance of using token price as a signal while focusing on development and growth, the EF's relationship with L2s, institutional onboarding, and so much more. Just a reminder, nothing said on this podcast is a solicitation to buy or sell any tokens, and that the guest or host might hold tokens discussed in any given episode. You can check out a full disclaimer at www.neonewstoday.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it on your favorite podcasting platform. And don't forget to share with friends and family. Every rating, review, like, and comment helps us reach more people and bring you more of your favorite guests. With all that said, I really enjoyed this conversation with Tomasz, and I hope you enjoy it too. Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy podcast. Today I am super psyched to be joined by Tomasz Stańczak, the founder of Nethermind, and now the co-executive director at the Ethereum Foundation. How are you doing today, Tomasz?
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's busy days, so it's great, but it's busy days because we're thinking about a lot of topics. It's thinking about the structure next year, finalizing budgets, some last-minute decisions. With some discussions that took maybe 2-3 months, and now are just culminating with those most challenging points.
Yeah, we're at this interesting point in time. We're recording just before the holidays, so the end of the year kind of gets busy. And then we also just wrapped up Dev Connect, so there's probably a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up from the relationships built there. So again, thank you so much for your time today. Just kind of like jumping into this, you have a really interesting background in that you come from like the TradFi space with CME Group and Citi. So what was the moment in which you kind of like stumbled on this crazy blockchain space? And what was the time where you went, aha, this is where I really need to be and where I want to be building?
Yeah, I think even before starting with traditional finance, when I was still mostly seeing my career in the future as something related to computer science, I was definitely over and over again interested in some minor topic on the edge of the mainstream media that were related to privacy, to a bit of rebellions and so on. But I never felt that I was part of it in any way, or were maybe too much aligned with, oh, this is the basic scenario I planned a career with the corporations. I would definitely think of the global brands as something that was inspiring me at that time to try. And it's just I didn't do enough searching on the side of things, so the different paths. And 2016 or 15 is sometime when I thought I would go to a Bitcoin meetup in London. I was at that time at Citibank. I was working at the FX third desk technology side, so I was team responsible for pricing FX forwards for the G10 and also emerging markets. I was building pricing systems there, and I thought it would be great to learn more about actually Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, since it's so close to FX markets. And one afternoon I went for the meetup, and that's where I learned about Ethereum. And suddenly I realized, there's something that connects everything that I was always interested with, but somehow never really dig deeper into that. So I looked at suddenly at economy, game theory, the finance world, technology, and a bit like future of society. So that was very, very interesting to keep digging, to read all the news, and it was my next 1 or 2 years, and it was more and more and more. And it's story of many people in blockchain, so nothing unique. Obviously, we stumble upon this, and then suddenly we realize why I haven't read more about it. Oh, this part is brilliant. This part is brilliant. Oh, this is also always something that I was interested in. I thought it doesn't exist. And yeah, 2017. In the meantime, I switched jobs. I joined a hedge fund called Rocus Capital, and I continued being interested in global markets at the time. Still very much a technologist. In 2017, I started Nethermind, and I was practically on my own, building and for a few months, and then some people started joining and helping to build. And I started building Ethereum client implementation software, just because I wanted to understand the internals while building some systems for trading. So I think what I wanted to build at the time was something like my personal auto trading systems that maybe I would later share with others, and it would be something like a bit comparable to searching as like a on-chain trading as well. Ether Delta was at that time, so I wanted to understand Ether Delta, and for that I started building the client implementation. I just couldn't stop, and ended up building much of the infrastructure for Ethereum, because Nethermind is nowadays one of the leading Ethereum clients, and much of the early code base was written by me, probably 80-90% of the early code base.
Nice. I just read a really great institutional report that was put together by L2b, Nethermind, and Etherealize, and it's really cool to kind of see this ecosystem kind of being able to share the message for what Ethereum is, and be able to kind of like talk the talk that Wall Street understands. When you look at reports like this and you look at what your peers are working on at Nethermind, do you kind of miss being in that space? Do you miss the job role and being able to get your hands dirty and to build?
No, I think that I'm still there. I mean, this is always the transition between coding all the time and solving problems, and then moving somewhere to research and being focused more on products and applications on the ecosystem. I think for all of us, it's like you look back and you think, oh, when it happened? Like, when did I start coding 50% less and 50% less again and again? And then as you're running management level tasks, it's very obvious, very natural to pick up every few months the situation where you have to slow down, do some research, read things, analyze things, maybe launch a few projects on your machine or in the cloud, and test them yourself. So yeah, I was doing that recently. Okay, not so recently, I say. Last year I was running like some full set of some of the L2s on my machine. So I set up the entire Tycho, Docker Compose, and then World, and something else. And again, I started experimenting with AI. So if you don't do that all the time, then at some point you start talking about things that you no longer understand how they evolved. So I don't miss it, because I think I still do it. And some of it is in the form of research or working very closely with people that I used to work with. And I think the rest, the management, is something that I could choose to do a long time ago.
So how do you feel that the kind of experience that you amassed at running Nethermind and doing all the research that you just spoke about, and your time at Flashbots and everything else previously in your career has kind of like helped culminate to prepare you for the things you need to do at the Ethereum Foundation? And what are some of the kind of like new crazy fires that have popped up that you never imagined in your previous roles you would have to be dealing with today?
Sure. When I think about Flashbots, Nethermind, also there were other things, obviously. So the board at StarkNet and TwinStake, so staking solutions, institutional staking, and DeFi protocol, Euler, and Forta on the security side. So if you take all of this together, it's really good representation of everything related to infrastructure, maybe slightly less on the application side, although at Nethermind we've been building applications also around tokenization, around the DeFi protocols. I used to travel a lot because of Flashbots, and Nethermind I decided to start spending more time in Asia. I did start working more with researchers, so it's really good representation across all of those different teams. And there's not that much novelty when moving to the foundation internally. The culture might be slightly different, but not that different as people would imagine. Like the sizes of the organizations are similar between Nethermind and the Ethereum Foundation. It's headcount-wise, it's around 250 people each. And this always defines a bit of like the managerial challenges, the operational challenges, the communication challenges within the organization. So this seems that it was similar. Then understanding the way the teams like Flashbots operated in collaborations with various researchers, that's also that helps you to understand how to work with teams that are very independent, decentralized, researchers here, researchers there. And yeah, I think what was unexpected, some of the internals, but not that much. Like somehow how the things were constructed on the communication side, on the internal communication side of the foundation. And also maybe I know which part. For sure, the policy part is something where I was least prepared for. So it's great that we have a fantastic policy lead now, Connor Spolisky, and that's foundation people were experienced to explore it, to understand it. So I'm learning here, and it's progressive.
What's really interesting that, we're talking about the nuances of what's happening at the Ethereum Foundation and how you feel that a lot hasn't changed. From the outside looking in, there's been a big shift in momentum and a big shift in kind of perception about what's going on at the EF. But before we kind of like delve into all of that, I am wearing the shirt I got at DevConnect, and this was your first DevConnect or EF event where you were co-executive director. So what was it like kind of being, I don't want to say like the emerging star at the show, but what was your experience like, boots on the ground, representing the EF now at DevConnect?
Sure, DevConnect, luckily there were so many stars because it's a very much properly decentralized system. Ethereum and the community and the industry like has many leaders that were stars there, and obviously many of them like clearly much more bright stars, and like for Ethereum with longer history and much more influential. So that means that I was not that much in the center of attention or busy, and also the real stars were organizers of the DevConnect. So Nathan and his team, they done an amazing job. Obviously there were some challenges, but generally we could be worried about some things ahead of DevConnect, but it ended up having everything that was important. So like the good vibe, lots of people, lots of great talks, lots of feeling of unity. I think it was very important for us to reject the message that was maybe a year or 2 years ago that it's all side events, that it doesn't feel like Ethereum is together. So there were some subtle things that we really cared about to invite all the L2s to be in the center of the venue, to make sure that we'll make more invitations to, like, even as this DevConnect, that will be the venue where you see lots of talks, to decide to invite much more applications and have more applications and use case tracks rather than just infrastructure and research. And here to address the things related to the fact that Ethereum Foundation very often will be seen as like research-led, and Ethereum to be sometimes over-focusing on the research and infra. So we addressed all of this, and now coming back to your question about me and how it felt, I really had enough time to just walk around the venue and drink some coffee and have a donut here and there and some empanadas, and randomly talk with people at the booths and see what they're building, not being recognized. So that's super nice. I don't think that people like Vitalik or many others have any of that opportunity to just disappear in the crowd. So it was great. It felt like it should feel. And also, obviously, important meetings with in Latin America were happening before and during DevConnect. So Brazil, Argentina. I had pleasure to attend TIF Latam before. I had lots of meetings with industry, financial industry, but also like the builders in Brazil. Similarly in Argentina. And that helps to understand, say, the local challenges, the economies, opportunities there, and to start building strategy that that can make like this simple, gentle touches and encouragement and amplification to help people really get full potential.
Yeah, I've been really exploring the intersection of LATAM and blockchain and crypto, and what are the different regions of LATAM that are served by the different tools that blockchain and crypto offer, remittances, access to payments and stable coins and things of that nature. And it really feels like this is a region of the world that is up and coming when it comes to how this technology is going to be implemented and adopted. So it was really cool to visit DevConnect, and it gave me a great reason to visit Buenos Aires and Argentina. So shout out to the team for hosting it there. Also, I just want to give a personal anecdote. One of my buddies is building the Pistachio app, and he said that you and the Ethereum Foundation just really had a hands-on relationship with reaching out and bringing applications into the event and creating a home, a space for applications to have a booth at the event. And typically, events of this size, booths cost tens of thousands of dollars. For a project that's bootstrapping, this might not be feasible for them to have a booth and to have access. So the anecdote I just want to throw out there and share is that it's really kind of inspiring to see a foundation kind of go down to the grassroots and reach out to up and coming projects and up and coming teams and give them a voice and give them a space to kind of share what they're working on. Is this by design, or is this just something you do naturally?
I wonder, obviously, if you're asking about the foundation, so we've spent a lot of time this year to design this massive outreach or like massive processing or inbound and not spending too much time on like filtering and selecting, but building that filtering selection from who engages and when you continue helping them, do they move forward? So sometimes when you have grant systems, they are designed to spend too much time overthinking about decisions and not letting people to just like move. Like that's what we want. Like the way you want founders to move is for them to always be on the run forward. Like to just search where the money comes the fastest and don't worry. So if you create a grant system that makes them wait for like months for you to decide, is it really like worth it or not, then you kind of kill the spirit of moving forward very fast. So we built the founder success team, we've built the application support team, we restructured our grant systems to be focused on introductions, mentoring, introductions to capital allocators, to alternative funding sources, and encouragement to build and to be visible. We've restructured our social media like approach to give more space and visibility to everyone who wanted to be visible and were building something interesting in Ethereum. So like a Ethereum account on Twitter has millions of followers, I think 4 million plus. And when you can feature builders, DeFi applications, then it starts being visible. And now I was thinking that, okay, so there might be tens of thousands of applications, but some that would be actively reaching for support at the given moment. It might be in thousands. So at some point, you have to be able to exhaust that number. It's not in millions. So if you really have a team that is focused on rushing and helping everyone and being responsive, then you can respond to everyone and help them. And then suddenly it should be slowing down in the amount of problems that you have to resolve because people learn from each other on how to move things fast. So hopefully DevConnect was also one of the results of all of those small changes in the attitude of the foundation and Ethereum ecosystem, like helping everyone without too much of thinking, am I making a mistake here? Are they ready? Are they fully technically prepared? And so on. So but also we brought fantastic people to support it, and they bring that spirit. So entire founder success team, the dev role, communication, it's top notch, and it also brings that vibe. They're visible, they're more visible. They go to universities, they go to events, they record videos, they're active on social medias.
So I think maybe one of the biggest changes that I saw almost initially when you and Xiaowei were announced as the new leads of the Ethereum Foundation was this kind of presence on social media. If you go back to a lot of the frustrations that people were having in Q4 of last year and even in Q1 of this year, it's that a lot of people felt like EF wasn't necessarily communicating well. The Twitter account was a little off, maybe is the best way to put it. There was no really kind of internal highlighting of the successes of the developers within the ecosystem or projects and products that were launching on top of Ethereum. So maybe this is kind of an open-ended question, but there were a lot of strong opinions that led into the shakeup of leadership. And from your perspective, what do you think was kind of the final straw that broke the camel's back? What was it in December, January, February, where EF figured this is the time to make a change and we want to do this?
Well, to my understanding, the foundation was aware that it needs the leadership change, that the board was preparing for it. It just was taking them longer time to find the right person that was ready to take that position. And I imagine the many leaders that would be great to run foundation are just extremely busy building very successful applications or infrastructure projects. And I happened to be ready to say, oh yeah, I was planning some transition around Nethermind. I knew who would take over as a CEO, and some other projects were at the stage when, again, I was not that critically busy. So it felt, oh yeah, that's the right moment. But for the foundation, it probably was difficult because Danny Ryan was leaving, but he started Etherealize, right? And that's great. That's extremely successful, high visibility project. Obviously, still like the success will be measured in the long term impact, the products that they will deliver. But I strongly believe that that's the team that will deliver a lot. And then we cannot say that there was like a series of events that invoked that leadership change, but just foundation took a bit longer, and then everyone felt like it was just one after another comments together were coming and forcing people to make changes. I think even the planned foundation offsite that was happening in March was already planned like months before, and was assumed that it will be opportunity for the new leadership to present or communicate. And I was joining just before that offsite. So
I think a lot of people had, if we look back at the track record, we're recording mid-December right now, and I think anybody can say that we've seen nothing but positive drive coming from the EF side. But I remember at the time there was a lot of concerns and consternations around like a bifurcated leadership model, having two co-executive directors. So what have been kind of the positives that have come from this model? How do you feel that you've benefited from having a co-executive director?
yeah, it's a lot of work, the management side, where you have both and it's for every leader, I guess. If you're CEO, if you're in the management, people will see how you communicate when you talk about strategy or vision. If you're busy with vision and strategy, people will see your communication, social media, your presence at the events, and so on. And that's like what you talk that you're going to do. But then also you have the organization internally. So, and it's all the different decisions. It's like the conflicts in the teams, the budgeting, the compensation, the processes, the structure, the hiring, the talent level. And this is a lot of work. And I think that in many organizations, if you stop seeing the leader, then it means that they are very busy internally. And the benefit that we have is that when I'm maybe seen more often communicating, like, so probably you'll see me more on podcast and Xiaowei, more at the events, more traveling. At the same time, there is like awful lot of the internal challenges, and Xiaowei is very often dealing with those, which gives me a lot of space to be present. And sometimes it's probably creates the impression that I'm busy with lots of heavy work, but the truth is that much of heavy lifting is done by Xiaowei internally. And there's always challenge, I guess, with the co-leadership. But we've discussed that very early in the process. We said how we approach it. We said whoever takes decisions earlier takes the decision. So it wouldn't be like the two people having to agree on everything, but simply we keep running. There are some situations when we start discussing things more, but at the moment, as we're going through budget and some structuring, I think Xiao is much more busy in the last week or two after DevConnect. I might have been sometimes more busy on the road, and like in the middle of the year, I guess people will not chase you about the budgets, about structure. Some people are on holidays, so it's a good support from each other. Like sometimes one of us is busier, sometimes the other one. We generally have good agreement majority of the things. When we disagree, we can talk. So it works. I think, yeah, like I see because I told you like there is a busy time with the budgets, with the compensation reviews, with the planning for the next year. I think now I'm spending a lot of time just thinking of like what the next year is, how do we plan to communicate what we're going to do in 2026. But Michelle is taking probably like hundreds of calls daily with people internally to help them plan the budgets and finalize the things.
I think there's a little bit of humility when you say that you came into the EF and there was already like a good structure there. From the outside looking in, many might say that the organization was chaotic. There was organized chaos. And one of the kind of really powerful things that have stuck out, particularly as the wheels have really started, the wheel of momentum has really started to pick up, is that there's now this story, there's this energy and this vibe that's emerging from the EF. And when you look at creators like Louis and you have voices like Benji, you're really starting to see this kind of fresh energy that's coming out from within the foundation. And I don't think that was just going to randomly happen. I think that there's a design in the org chart that was created to empower that. So what were some of like the broader restructurings? What were some of the new teams that were put into place? I really want to highlight the product success team, the founder success team, and also this kind of like narrative team is just what I'll loosely call them with the folks that are coming out. There's a lot of strong consensus that's forming around these teams. And it's a very big positive that like if you go on CT, crypto Twitter, you'll see people talking positively about this. So was that kind of already in the works, or did you and Xiaowei kind of push that ball and get that momentum started?
So I think that now if I review the last few months and to really give credit to many people, and I would probably miss many contributions. So sorry for that if you feel I contributed greatly. But in April, like one of the early meetings, so they had this at this offsite, the foundation offsite, I was walking around and I was bumping into people that I felt like, oh, they like have so much energy and they have some vision. Some of them were moving to other teams. Like sometimes it was they were joining Interialize. Sometimes they decided to leave to start some projects of their own. And I was asking them question like, who hired you? Who hired you? And like almost in many cases, people were saying, oh, it was James Smith. It was James Smith. And like I went to James Smith. I said, like you have talent for people. and I said like, would you be able to help me to understand the structure on the ecosystem development side? And then the one decision that it suggested to the management was to give James ability to restructure in the entire ecodev. And that's that pleasure of delegation when you can find one person and say like, just take this huge part of the foundation and I feel I trust you, like from those conversations, from the way how you talk about the vision. And I remember at that time we like there's lots of skepticism here and there, like with everyone who kind of is not yet clearly in the leadership position and the high level, and people sometimes interacted, and you don't see from people what really blocks them or what doesn't allow them to deliver everything that they would like to. And then we agreed that he'll have time to, like, I think it was 10th of June, and he said okay, and just without really many conversations, only within a month or two, he brought like 15 to 20 hires. And now you see those people. Now you see Louis, you see Abbas, you see the entire founder success team, you see Binji, you see... it's not only James, like at the same time, because we started communicating more. So I think people like Josh Stark, people like Josh Peitzer started being more active and in saying yes to things and talking more about the foundation, communicating more, giving more space to the application. So definitely the social media rewriting was Josh Stark and him bringing Emily on board. And I think Benji and Louis really came from the efforts of Bastian on the management side and Josh Rudolph. So I would say we have some like this, people that are really capable of bringing great talent. Particularly, I think that Justin Drake and James Smith created these, many other leaders at the foundation. But I remember when I brought on board the head of talent, RP, she's... like the head of talent role at the foundation is more of thinking of how to help the entire ecosystem to make sure that the talent stays, circulates, and comes to the Ethereum ecosystem, and not only talking about the talent and hiring at the foundation. So thinking of, if somebody decides to learn at the foundation and move on, how to make sure they have this seat as a very clear career step, the plan that they can build something even larger independently. And I told RP that, like, if James or Justin want to hire, like, just let them hire, because these are fantastic people hiring top talent, and now we see the results of it. So on the communications, and many other people contributed, but James really structured the entire eco dev. So I think it's very important for people to notice him, to see him as a very strong figure at the foundation and the Ethereum ecosystem. I think that James, now being maybe less busy with structuring things, is more active, and if you can give him a follow, that's great. I don't remember, he has like the Twitter handle, I think it was Snapcrackle or something like that.
I've already slapped him with a follow. And I'm not even necessarily asking you to touch on this topic, but I just want to use it as kind of like a metric for the success that I've seen come from this kind of internal reinvigoration of pride from the EF. Last week, Solana Breakpoint happened, and some statistics were thrown around that may or may not have been misleading. We don't have to jump into this, but what I really take notice for in the strength of people who believe in the ecosystem that they build in is who's going to step up and who's going to defend and who's going to fight back for what they're working on and what they believe in. And when you look at a lot of the responses, there was a lot of passion and fact-based responses as well, but there was a lot of passion that was coming from people who were working within the EF, and I don't think you would have seen that a year ago. So it's really cool to kind of see this personal pride, this subjective integrity kind of like take off. And you see all the different arms and people that are contributing to the EF really feel that they are so passionate and they love what they're working on so much that they want to stand up and they want to say something. So we don't have to touch on why or what or how or who said what. I just use that as like a metric to follow what's happening. And it's just like all signs pointing to the right direction and growth. The beauty behind crypto and blockchain is that for the first time in history, as part of the tech stack, we have an economic model that's built into it. We have code, and then we have tokens, and tokens can be traded on secondary markets. So as much as the developer and the builder and the engineer never wants to talk about token price, it is something that we have to keep in the back of our minds, because there are people who participate in this ecosystem who that's what they focus on, and it's inherently a part of the tech stack that we're using to build. So how do you kind of walk the tightrope of paying attention to token price and the sentiment that maybe token holders have on crypto Twitter, and maybe not like using that as your North Star for the why for what you do, but how do you walk the tightrope of paying attention to price and sentiment and also kind of like directing development and curating the long-term direction of an ecosystem?
So, like our own budgets are affected by ETH price, right? So we pay attention to understand how to structure, plan the budget for the organization. Foundation holds 240,000 ETH, I think. So it's around $700 million now, and this is like overwhelming majority of what we are holding. Like rest is fiat positions that are they're just like long-term securing the all the payments like for 2.5 years. That's the plan. You've seen the treasury policy from the foundation. So definitely we have to pay attention. And also the second thing that you mentioned is the sentiment. When you analyze the behavior of the industry, of the ecosystem, if the prices of tokens on the exchanges go down, then you know that some teams get stressed. Maybe their budgets get restructured. They make cuts. They cannot execute. So you immediately know that some fear appears, right? That some people will be less likely to take risks, reluctant to deliver some projects, like thinking of what really is not necessary. And you know that some of those changes might be immediately affecting people's feelings, right? So if you go to events, I'm joking that I always write the content for the talks like a day before, which means that usually it's just black text and white screen because we don't have the time to send it to designers. But at the same time, you don't make mistakes usually of not feeling the mood of people that you're talking to, right? Like that you always feel fresh with this a bit of ambient situation of what people currently think is important. Whether now you talk to everyone's energy about building because they think like, I can do everything, there's no risk, I have resources for everything, I can explore, I can research, I want to ship. Or some other day you walk into the room and everyone is thinking like, will I be able to build anything? Is it even going anywhere? So people are very emotional. So if you don't follow that, then it's hard to lead and continue the communication. The second thing is like we mentioned this as a North Star and so on. So this is non-existent in the foundation. Is like to think that we somehow drive it, but it is important for us to understand how the the Ether is how it is enshrined and connected with all the aspects of the security of the protocol. And then obviously people ask questions about the fees from L2s, the L1 fees, about the burning rate, about the issuance, and so on. And all of that affects the security incentives for various participants, whether it's validators, whether it's block builders, whether it's and other infrastructure components, so relayer, solvers, the economic activity on chain. All of this defines their incentives, and then it tells you, okay, if those incentives disappear, is there any risk to the permissionlessness of the protocol, to the security of the protocol, and so on. So this is why the researchers at the EF obviously look at everything together, and I have to pay attention as well. And then you have the entire ecosystem industry that tries to define what are the models to define that security that place the Ether in all of the vision of where Ethereum goes. And we've talked to many people about it, obviously, and I think this is a great disagreement. And in the end, for many of us, like the seeing Ether as like just a fundamental aspect of the future security and economy and collateralization and being used on Ethereum that becomes global, where all the digital assets and the tokenization happens. This for me feels like the most consistent carrier of the security of the network and the incentives to all the infrastructure participants that secure the network. And the other models that like try to look at Ethereum as some kind of company or revenue model, they think like this just describes something that is super short term and not really representing the entire movement and revolution and the depth of the meaning of what we're building and what we're changing. They do define very often the success on the demand side and the activity. So they do demand whether we really have impact, whether we have users, and that's why it matters. So it's just the thing is, sometimes you say, oh, the fees to Ethereum dropped because there's less users, and then there's worry. But then the other times you'll see, oh, the fees drop because the block capacity increased, and there's temporary that the entire demand didn't yet react to start using the chain. And then you say, well, that's okay, that's perfect, because we decrease the price for the users. And my expectation is simply the demand will always, in the long term or the mid to long term, will catch up with the supply of the network. It's just that people are adjusting to build more on L1. People feel more confidence about building on L1. Also, people feel more confidence to launch more L2s and to load a lot of activity on L2s. Hence, everything that we do on scaling side will always find the increased flow, the increased revenue to the validators, the operators, increased burning, and so on. And like if we scale 10x and we're on the way there, let's say that we scaled 2x this year, but there are really, really promising designs, technological designs that talk about 5x more next year. So as long as the demand for the block space catches up, and I'm pretty sure it does, and we see now the increased interest in the L1, building on L1, tapping into the liquidity that's on L1, and also the large enough and meaningful enough institutional projects that always will choose L1 over L2s. While at the same time, there is massively growing L2 activity. So all of that together leads to this demand immunity feeling. Not immunity, but like over time, feeling all the new supply. And that means that in general, the network will be more and more successful and see more usage.
I think if you look back from like the post 2022 era, when the rollup centric roadmap really started to take off, it was a necessity to have L2s remove activity on the L1 because of the surge in fees. And then while immediately we saw this relief and people were really happy, you kind of like go into the bear market and then everyone turns and they're mad at the L2s because it's vampire attacking the value of ETH on the L1. And so while we needed to have these L2s to alleviate the pressure that was on the L1, now you start having this narrative kind of like snowball and compound into another direction where L2s are bad, L2s are vampiric to Ethereum as an L1. And, you know, they have their own tokens. So there's a lot of these kind of like economic incentives for people to have hot takes, and you can opine on whether the tokens accrued value or took value away from ETH or not. But what I'm interested in hearing about is the relationship with L2s that you view that the foundation and that Ethereum should have, because we have now this roadmap for native and based rollups, for the Ethereum interoperability layer, and we're starting to think about how in the next few years we can really tie the token economic models and activity of L2s back to the L1 so that there can be some flywheel effects that are sent to ETH, the asset. So without talking about how ETH will accrue in price or whatever, I want to hear more about what's your perspective about the types and forms of relationships that you view the EF should have with L2s, and are they good? Are L2s good? Do we want them? Does the EF want to have a strong relationship with each of the L2s?
So we are very much committed to the L2 related roadmap, and we try to put a lot of effort. We do put a lot of effort into ensuring that we understand the challenges and opportunities that are with L2s, that we understand their technological innovations. We have a few initiatives that are very much related to L2. So the entire interop space is about making sure that the users can very easily move the assets, funds, make calls between the L2s and L1s. Then there is obviously set of initiatives that are independent of the foundation but supported by the foundation, like L2 that give space for like auditing and categorization of different L2s. That helps institutions a lot to choose where to build, and it helps to incentivize people to think about security of their networks and to make improvements. Now, the other things is that now we're preparing a significant event that will be for engineers and researchers of all the different L2s. And the goals that we have are following. So we want the new L2s that appeared in Asia. So think about Xlayer, think about Jove, think about various like large e-commerce projects in China that are launching their L2s. Think about Giwa from Upbit. So these are super exciting projects in Asia that very often when we ask them what you care about the most, they say like, we would like to be really connected with the Ethereum ecosystem. And first, like when you see those announcements, like China is building L2 or the major exchange in Asia is building L2, then in the West, people don't feel it entirely. They think like, but will it be really part of the ecosystem? And then you go there and say, we want to be connected. And the moment when I've heard it, like that's really the problem is when we want to get connected, we started thinking how we do it best. And the event that we're organizing will be bringing probably like 100 to 150 people that are researchers, engineers, so they can exchange the ideas on technology, on the direction, on just know each other and scale better and secure the network better and work on interop. And I'm very excited about that one. So we created a team or simply like an initiative at the foundation that is related to like Ethereum as a platform for launching L2s and making sure that the L1 becomes really this primary place where people think that we want it to be center for like settlement, for liquidity for the L2s. And we know that obviously when we're launching a new chain, we're launching it as an L2 on Ethereum. So that team is active now. Then the other things is we do receive feedback. Some L2s are very unhappy, right? They say, foundation doesn't really like give us the space, or like the ecosystem is not friendly for us. And it's always a question of where you allocate your attention. Like when you go to Twitter, there will be people that will say terrible things. There will be people that will tell you that you're the best in the world, and like that you just keep doing what you're doing. And you have to discard both and or take into account both, like listen to a critique and that. When you discard those, take into account these extreme voices, then in both cases, probably you're a bit wiser. And this really relates to L2s, like where they choose to listen, where they show initiative to be friendly, because Ethereum Foundation for now, for sure, is friendly to all the L2s, and we invite them to work together, to announce together. We invite them to various like results of the efforts that we execute around the world on bringing top businesses and builders to understand how much they can trust Ethereum, what level of security they get. We'll start explaining how to work on different L2s. We'll probably start certifying solutions providers. That's one of the ideas for 2026 to build a system for telling who can explain you like how to build an Ethereum very complex products like privacy solutions, L2 solutions. And that means that willingness is there from the Ethereum Foundation. And so it's a matter of choice how to best structure that in all the different situations. There's lots of L2s. We pay attention to all of them, but depending on the situation, always it feels like maybe for a moment it feels like we're favoring one or the other. It's just because some events that happen on that L2, like we want to talk about it and get excited, but then we continuously look for more excitement. So and there's lots. So recently, for example, ZK Singh was announcing the combination of the liquidity from the layer 1 to be easily borrowed to the L2. And I think this is a beautiful example of L2 really showing the strong commitment to building on Ethereum and integrating with Ethereum very closely. So I'm very excited about this. Many more, obviously now, after this podcast, and everyone who wasn't mentioned will probably a bit more. But then I hope that this works as an encouragement to make big announcements and big integrations and be friendly and reach out to us and say, this is what we're doing. Can you retweet? We love it when it happens. Like when an L2 sends us something, it says like this like we care about it. There's a story of Cello that moved from being L1 and came back as an L2 on Ethereum, and that's a beautiful story of this year. And they have like lots of users and lots of success with very important projects on identity and on payment systems and Polygon, obviously. So here, with Polygon, we have that challenge where much of the ecosystem is like struggling to categorize and define Polygon, because it's not a typical L2 structure, but historically it has a really, really strong impact, positive impact on the innovation and on bringing users to the Ethereum ecosystem, to EVM ecosystem. So, and I'm super happy about DEF CON heading to India. I think that sure, Polygon is international, but has lots of roots in Indian community and definitely brought on board but millions of users in India. So I think this will be a great opportunity to be active together there as well. And many, many more. You see, I think that last week we have a bit of a drama here and there about like Starknet and Ethereum communication, Ethereum Foundation communication. We put a lot of efforts to showcase like how much innovation came from Starknet, how much we're excited about BTC-Fi. The other challenge there is that Starknet is non-EVM, so suddenly it also activates engineers. The engineers, when they actually start getting excited about the conflict, this is because they use different technologies and they're really opinionated about what technologies like to use. So in all the other cases, engineers are super, super cool, and it's easiest to get engineers to work together. And maybe it's more like business development teams that feel the competition. In the cases where technology stack is slightly different, or even worse, when there's like a researcher statements that disagree on like what is the fundamental truth about the future, that's where there's more space for conflict. But that it also means that there is more space for innovation in those cases. So I think it's healthy overall for the ecosystem.
I think as we kind of like zoom out and wrap up on the interview, one of the things I'm most excited about, again, is this ability for there to be at the protocol level a way for L2s to kind of prop up Ethereum, because the L2s receive the benefit of state security from Ethereum. So creating that kind of like bi-directional flow. So in my mind, like native rollups and the interop layer are a really big key component piece to this. Am I kind of like blowing out of proportion the hope and opportunity that native rollups and EIL offer, or am I kind of like on the right track?
I think it's worth to pay attention to native rollups. I think it's worth to believe strongly that this is very important path. It's worth to also be cautious and understand that even in that world, all the other L2 structures remain extremely important. And based rollups and native rollups and the more traditional structures with EVMs, with non-EVM solutions. And so look obviously at the innovation coming from Tycho. Look at the world around native rollups, lean Ethereum, so closer to Justin Drake and his vision for the future. We do put a lot of effort on integrating those different visions and never discarding them too early, giving a hint of what we believe in, but also showing some doubt and space for different approaches. You have those teams presenting asynchronous composability, synchronous composability, different approaches to sequencing, different approaches to rollup security. And now when you look a few years back, then you wouldn't be able to predict exactly how the ecosystem would grow, right? So when the ZK VMs will be ready, when the ZK technology will evolve, how difficult it will be to build fraud proofs, how difficult it will be to build interoperability, what will be the challenges with the base rollups and like pre-confirmations, decentralization, and so on, how you'll sequence the blocks, block building. And we've worked a lot on this. I was involved in many of the designs of block building for L2s with Flashbot's team at the time. We're at Nethermind, we were building lots of different structures for for the L2s, right? So, and I was reading also multiple different approaches to categorization. At some point in time, like 2-3 years ago, John Charbonneau was publishing a lot of insights into categorization of rollups. And it's a difficult topic because it shows the research and engineering space at different categories and how you define the security, not only security of the protocol, but also assets. And then on top of all of this, you look also at the questions of the fees of the, and even if you go beyond technology, the people start talking about alignment. So they probably kind of what voice do those L2s are using on Twitter? And then around technology, people will sometimes take a strong belief, oh, this must be native rollup, and they would just question is, will they support native rollup because they start researching and building it and supporting teams that build it, or they'll focus on attacking everything else? And I think that the first approach is the right one. So, but everyone has their role, like sometimes you have to point out also the challenges and holes and security challenges, or maybe that loss of values, like loss of trustlessness, loss of security that is potential if you go some path. And so you need all of those people to be loud and clear and involved, respectful, but loud, I think.
So I think my second to last question will be about Etherealize and the relationship that EF and the Ethereum ecosystem more broadly is starting to form with traditional institutions. We see from a regulatory perspective, the US and other regional jurisdictions becoming more, I don't want to say friendly towards blockchain and crypto, but creating clear guidelines for banks and other traditional financial institutions to onboard. And clearly, they want tokenization. You, in your talk at the Bankless Summit, kind of briefly touched upon Danny Ryan's talk at DevConnect about how institutions are starting to see the value prop that blockchains offer. So what does the kind of vision for the next year or 2 or 3 look like for not necessarily going out and being in the room with these guys to onboard them, but for making it possible from a technological standpoint to help empower them to tokenize and come on to blockchain rails, come on to Ethereum?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fine to use the word friendly. They're excited. They want to see that future. They understood that future in many cases. You have fantastic people like Larry Fink, BlackRock, looking at the future of tokenization and saying clearly that's where it goes. They build on Ethereum. There's you have I think in Berkeley this year, Hester Pierce was talking about the privacy, and you see now and Paul Atkins from SEC talking about the native issuance, the tokenization of stocks. Look, they're excited to see the future, and they're friendly in a way that they support the relevant and security-based innovation, and they see that there is high level of security, there is trustlessness, there's lots of innovation, and there is inevitability of the future, and they try to accelerate it because I think that everyone will benefit from that, and that's what we believed in for a long time. So when we say that the institutions start to warm up, sometimes it's just like, oh, the entire society has learned, and hence it allowed to make changes because everyone started trusted more in the technology. The technology brings removes the need for trust, right? The technology itself has to be trusted, and as that opening appeared for many institutions, they've been building innovation teams, explorations for blockchain and so on, and gradually preparing for these moments, and now they're just building, and we're learning the same language gradually. And this is what Danny Ryan was talking about, that we used to have different language, and now we're learning that when we talk about trust, they talk about risk, and it's like an inverse, like the measure of risk is almost like invert of the measure of trust that is required. The more risky thing, then the more you have to trust the person to then remove that risk, and or even more. You can really quantify it. Yeah, so that's what's happening, and I'm great to see it because the institutions represent some structure, some organization of people. Sometimes, obviously, like we worry that institutions represent just like a very small bunch of shareholders, but no, usually they need to have obviously the users that need to provide services, and always the profit. In a good market, the profit of the institution should be a small fraction of the utility that they bring to everyone, and if they can deliver the technology, then this is how we make Ethereum impactful as well, not only for institutions, but also for institutions.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like Vanguard talking about launching ETFs, Vanguard represents American investors, people who go to work day in and day out and have 401ks, and they just contribute to their retirement earnings. They're not all these institutions or evil for-profit corporations that we can easily kind of like slap the sticker on and categorize them as. So, wrapping up, the last question I want to ask you, and it's always hard to kind of define where we're going next and what's happening next. But as you're kind of going through compensation packages for the year and you're doing your year-end budgets, what's kind of the driving focus for 2026? How do you see the Ethereum Foundation building off of the successes of this year and continuing to work on what works and maybe steering the ship and correcting course in areas that aren't necessarily going the way you want?
So Foundation talks and works on community values of the privacy, open source, censorship resistance, security. So it'll be important to understand how different aspects, tracks of protocol efforts of the foundation relate to those. So you have the very significant and talented privacy team, around 50 people with multiple very impactful projects, and they work on privacy of reads, writes, privacy of the proving and allowing to integrate like the ZK system, so if the privacy. So we expect a lot of impact there. We already see a lot of new approach applications that are driven by Igor Barinov, who leads the privacy cluster at the foundation. Then you have the security aspect. So $1 trillion security gets increased budgets for next year, more effort to coordinate, to implement solutions that make Ethereum even safer. Well, I mean, obviously we understand all the challenges of the hacks, of the challenges of the smart contracts, but we say even safer, as Ethereum is definitely like the top safety plays on the blockchain space, where people really spend countless time on the verification of every single upgrade, with 5 clients on each side, the execution layer, consensus layer, and you have like thousands of hours of thousands of security researchers looking at everything. We want to push it much farther. And the other thing is, on the censorship resistance side, we have teams working on Fossil and other solutions that then improve the fair access to the markets and to the blockchain. And well, open source wise, so for example, we implemented that into our policies around treasury. So we'll be really putting a lot of pressure on the protocols that are not fully open source and free license and deploying DeFi protocols on chain. So these are the main areas around the values, and on top of it, obviously, there's lots of impact related work on the ecosystem development and top quality engineering. Will be improving further scaling. So scaling will continue being a focus area. So scaling with everything else in mind.
Amazing. Well, Tomasz, thank you so much for taking the time out of your super hectic schedule in a late time zone in the world right now. I really appreciate the time you gave to the Smart Economy podcast. And like I said, I've been looking forward to this interview, going back to when you and Xiaowei first took reins over the EF. So thank you so much for giving an hour of your time to us. I really appreciate it.
So it was such a pleasure. It was lots of great questions, good vibe, and it's a good time to really talk about the summary of this year and the next year, the future.
Awesome. Well, when people are hearing this, it will be the middle of January. So hopefully you all have something to look forward to coming from the EF for the coming year.
Thank you. And well, Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year's. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Smart Economy podcast. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes and insights, head over to www.smarteconomypodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of our video content. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please show your support by liking, commenting, and reviewing this episode on your favorite podcasting platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and bring even better content your way. We'd also love to hear from you, so please drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube to share what topics you'd like us to cover or who you'd like to see as our next guest. And if you or someone you know would make for a great guest, please reach out. We're always on the hunt for fresh voices and new perspectives. And lastly, for our NEO token holders out there, please consider voting for NEO News Today as your council representative. We've proudly been serving the NEO ecosystem since 2017, and we'll continue to do so by putting portions of our council rewards directly back into ecosystem growth initiatives. Once again, thank you so much for listening to the Smart Economy podcast. We look forward to catching you next time.